Hi everyone, welcome to today's research-informed defensive lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I am your host, as always, John Correa.
And I'm your co-host, Neil Widener.
Palm pepper spray is next generation OC spray. It's hot at 1.4% major capsaicinoids, and its modular design means you can customize it exactly to you. 3 different setups, lots of different color combinations. You can make it exactly as you like. And the flip top safety prevents accidental discharges. It's 10 to 12 foot range and 25 half-second blasts. Make sure that you can keep that long range eye poke at long range. I trust Palm OC and I recommend it for everyone for self-defense.
This video is out of Spartanburg, South Carolina, and what you're gonna see here at the beginning is a woman who has a gun out with a guy who's kind of pacing around her. Now, the news stories that I have linked in the description said he has been going around this parking lot trying to pull people out of their cars and steal their cars. So that's the context here. We have audio from a couple of cell phone videos, including when the cops show up. Let's listen in.
Get my shit.
It's right here.
Yeah, so go on.
Back up.
You better go on.
Back up.
The fuck wrong?
Somebody's up here. Where's that mom?
Bro, you about to get shot, bro. You about to get shot, bro.
You better back up. Back up. Hey, come here.
Give me your hand.
Come on, Bob. Everybody tripping. Hey, there we go.
Oh yeah!
Hey, if you need to have a thing happen.
The news that I've been able to find, it's been kind of sketchy, honestly, but I've put links in the description on this. And the police got him into custody, got him into cuffs finally, and apparently took him to the hospital, the mental health hospital, to get some help. I haven't seen anything as far as charges filed against this man. So I think what ended up happening is they just took him in for mental health evaluation and help.
We finally got a restock in the web shop for the ASP t-shirts. It has the ASP logo on it that says good, sane, sober, moral, and prudent repeated on it. These are super cool in lots of different colors. Head to the web store and pick one up, would you? Helps us kind of run the business here and bring you these lessons every day.
You know, to start this one, Neil, I want to say that context is king, right? If we just see this and some guy's wandering around the parking lot and she's pointing a gun at him, you're like, whoa, what the heck is happening here? Is that justified? Is she doing something wrong? But once you get the context here and you recognize, no, guys pulling people out of cars and threatening folks and trying to carjack them, carjacking is a violent felony against the person, that makes this much more reasonable. And I also want to say, most people who are suffering from a mental health break or, you know, having some kind of manic episode or a schizophrenic break, something like that, they're almost always only a danger to themselves. It's very rare that somebody like this is a danger to others. But that said, you're not required to figure out what's exactly going on inside their head, and you can protect yourself from a deadly threat like this.
Yeah, the thing that is always scary about this is that, like you say, most of the time they are only a threat to themselves, but those few times that they're a threat to others, they are a big threat to others. And when they're not thinking right, when their mental capacity is loaded to such that it is, a lot of times they're capable of things that most of us aren't, and we don't consider that. So I don't have a problem with this lady having a gun in her hand. I don't have a problem with her response. I do have some concerns and some things that I think we could do better, and some great lessons here, but her response, I think, was on point. And just not knowing what this guy brings to the table, she needs to protect herself and her family.
I agree. And I think that, her, again, a man here, you can see he's wide in the shoulders, thin in the waist, so he's clearly physically capable. And that kind of a disparity between a woman and a man, she can probably start to realize this guy's going to put me in the hospital if he puts his hands on me because he's being violent towards me, trying to jerk me out of my car. So that starts to rise things to the level of reasonableness of her having a gun in her hand. Remember, those contexts are always important. Usually one man against another here, that's going to be much harder to justify. So who you are and what you know and how those things go are important. Now, I'm going to say, again, I have no problem with her having a gun in her hand, given that totality of the circumstances. I do want to notice here, though, she's on the phone. If at all possible, if you feel endangered enough to have a gun in your hand, let somebody else be on the phone with 911. You figure out what's going on with the person and you focus on that threat. I also feel like here, everyone else needs to not be gawking and bystanding and needs to show some sense of urgency to get in the car and get gone from here. I do also like, though, Neil, that she's standing between them here because she's the one that has the capability to end the threat.
Yeah, that was the first tactical piece of this that I saw was she stepped between her family and the threat or whoever she was with there. I don't know if that's her kids or her sister, whatever, but her loved ones were there and she stepped in front because she had the ability to protect them. Now, like you said, she's got her phone to her ear, she's got her gun pointed down. She's not really paying that much attention and giving the care that I would think that one would want to in this case. So this is where I like what she's doing, but I think she could do it so much better. And so that's the thing. I just want to get some lessons from this. But the other side of this is, again, context is key, and we don't know if they're coming or going. If they just got there and they're getting unloaded, it's completely okay and acceptable to say, hey, you know what, we're not going shopping today. Let's get back in the car and get out of here. There's something going on. Some families have a code word. Some people just say, hey, we're not doing this right now. And it's okay to just get back in the car and leave. So if that's the context that they were just arriving, be open to the idea that, maybe I don't need to go shopping for school supplies right now, or maybe I need to go shopping somewhere else right now because there's something going on in this parking lot that's sketchy and we are at risk. So, opening your mind up to that side of the decision process and that decision tree could potentially save you a whole lot of heartache. And like John says, I think that there was just nobody was really moving very quickly. Everybody was just kind of standing there very nonchalant and letting this thing unfold. And that's when the bad stuff happens, when we let our guard down just enough to let somebody with bad intentions do what they intend to do.
And also, get in the car or get back in the store. Just get away from this guy. Close the doors and lock them. Now, of course, if you got a baby in a car seat, you're not going to be able to do that. So context always matters, right? Principles are universal. Applications are very personal based on the exact circumstances. Now, he starts coming their way again, and I'm going to say, before he does that, she turns her back on him. Boy, this is dangerous, and I'm grateful that nothing bad happened here, but I think we also need to recognize that turning your back on somebody who could reemerge as a deadly threat very, very quickly while you're on the phone, this is like pat your head and rub your belly level of trying to do 5 things at once. I really wouldn't recommend turning your back on a deadly threat, Neil.
Yeah, no, her standing there facing him down with a gun in her hand, I think is the right thing to do. The phone in her, up to her ear is a questionable piece. I don't care for it, especially when there were other people there that could have been on the phone with the police or with whoever. So put the phone down and focus on the threat. But turning her back was a huge mistake and a huge thing that I can't emphasize this enough for folks that are watching. If there's a threat big enough to you that you decide you have to get a gun in your hand, do not take your eyes off of that. And then the next piece of it, she walks back and lets the family get between her and the threat. And so now you've got some explaining to do if this all turns into a whole lot of nothing of why did you have a gun out if it was that big of a deal? Why did you let him get in there and between or get your family between you and the threat? And so it just starts, that's where it potentially gets a little sketchy for some folks from a legal perspective, but also from the perspective of protecting your family. You got to stay between your loved ones and the threat. And if you need to stand up to that guy, stand up to that guy. Or if you're going to turn and look at your family, keep him in your periphery. But man, turning your back and walking away, and you see this guy jumped at that moment, and he started closing the distance. And if he had really bad intention, he could have closed that distance and gone hands-on before she had a chance to react.
And exactly the danger of what we are worried about is what happened. He sees her turn her back, so he's going to advance. So now she turns around. Of course, she's got the people she's trying to protect between her and this threat now. I want to note a couple things, okay? This shows to me, I think a firearm is an incredibly powerful force multiplier, and I'm glad she had it on her, and I think that all people have the right to keep and bear arms, have the right to self-defense. Also, a firearm is a powerful tool, doesn't require an inordinate amount of training, but notice here that her left thumb, her support hand thumb is back behind the slide. That's going to cause a malfunction if she has to press the trigger. She's not ready to press the trigger right now, and her trigger finger is on the trigger. These show me that she's not highly trained with a firearm, and not everybody is, and I get it. And it worked even despite her lack of training. Just showing the gun worked. That said, even a little bit of training, an 8-hour class, something with a qualified instructor to learn a little bit of technique on how to grip this gun, on trigger finger discipline, can prevent things like a slide bite stopping this if you have to use the gun, and prevent negligent discharges. So a little bit of training can go a long way here, Neil, even though it worked without it.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that it worked. I'm thrilled that she didn't have to pull the trigger. It's that this is why we carry a gun, right? So that we don't have to use it. But with all of that said, if the worst happens and she has to use that gun, she's got herself at a disadvantage. And again, this is no shade on this particular person. This is very normal of what we see when folks show up for classes. They just haven't spent a lot of time with it. And it doesn't take hundreds and thousands of hours to become proficient. It does to become an expert, but if you want to become proficient, spending a Saturday afternoon in a class or a weekend in somebody's class to just get good with the gun and understand the techniques and how to do this all safely and how to mitigate the risk that you're taking by pulling this gun. Because with her finger on that trigger, if she has an ND, now she's fired one off and she's torched one off in a parking lot, and that bullet's going to come down somewhere. It's going to hit something, and now she's responsible. So just that trigger, finger being off of the trigger would have been great. And again, that grip is potentially going to cause that she's maybe holding a single shot firearm at this time. So just understanding that and getting into a class is really important. And I would highly suggest anybody that hasn't ever taken a firearms class, go spend a Saturday afternoon with an instructor, find a good instructor and learn how to do this stuff so that when your day comes, if it does, and I pray that it doesn't for any of you, but some of you it will. So when that day comes, you're ready to act, and you can act efficiently.
I also want to say explicitly, I do not believe that you should have a government mandated class in order to have the right to carry a firearm. I just think it's a smart idea to go get training so that if, God forbid, you need it, then you are competent and capable with it. That's a difference between, hey, we're going to do this because it's smart for us to do, and the government mandates that we do things. I don't believe in government licensure for rights of any kind. Now, thankfully, she didn't have to shoot him. They got away. Win. Now, he's going to go here and he's going to try to jerk open the door of a police cruiser with an officer who has finally showed up. Of course, when seconds count, the police are minutes away. They did finally show up. That's good. I want to note a difference here. Did you notice that we had a video on the channel a few weeks ago of a guy trying to take, a cruiser from a female police officer, and she ends up giving the guy her gun. This officer, also a female officer, instead decides to fight the guy. And look at the difference in outcomes. She doesn't end up giving the guy a handgun. He doesn't end up getting shot, because it seems to me that she has a high level of capability, of competence, and of confidence, and therefore she's able to handle that problem, fight this guy off from the driver's seat of her cruiser. And so this is a reminder not only to police officers, but to everyone, that I think that having those high level of skills is important, helpful, and useful in order to handle problems without having to shoot somebody.
Yeah, and I love the attitude to stand up or to sit in the car, whatever it is. The attitude to fight, the attitude to not give up when somebody bigger than her or stronger than her came in. She used what she could to her advantage. And I think sitting in the car was probably an advantage, because it's harder for him to get to the gun. It's harder for him to handle her. He's not going to pick her up and throw her around as she's in that car. So she can find the space and made it easier for her, herself to fight him off until her partner arrived, and now when it's 2-on-1, now you've got help, but she stood up when she needed to stand up, and she did what she needed to do, and I think the attitude was more important than any of the rest of this, that she knew she could do it, and she did it without hesitation.
Attitude is king all the time, and we see attitude win fights when skills are deficient, even when planning is deficient. Now, that said, You know, this is the kind of skill set that in order to do really well here, you don't want your first experience with that to be when some guy's trying to jerk you out of your car. You want to know leverage points. You want to know how to use your strength and your lower body, how to throw strikes from those kinds of positions, maybe how to access your tools from here. You know, I think certainly an OC spray would have been a useful tool as the guy's approaching the car. As he gets close, nah, man, if you're going to fight me, you're going to fight me through a lot of pain. I think earlier, too, I think the other lady who had the gun, I mean, if she had an OC spray and just hosed that guy down, would have been totally justified, might have taken the fight completely out of him. I don't think it would have made anything worse for sure. Now, then she does fight him off, and then the second officer shows up, yeehaw, thank God the cavalry arrived, and helped her kind of get the guy out a little bit, but she had to fight him off for sure a significant amount by herself, but the help shows up, and that's very good. And I want to note here that they have a little different understanding of what, you know, based on their perspective, because the female officer, you see her backing away and going for her taser here. Whereas the male officer decides, you know what, this is a good opportunity with him distracted looking at her to go in and go Terry Tate office linebacker and take this guy down. I think both of those are really good choices based on who they are, what their skill set is, where the guy is paying attention. And so both good choices. Rather than pulling a gun, they got after the guy, and kudos to them for that.
Yeah, you got to look at where everyone is in space, and this is a very fluid situation. She's just fought with him physically in the car for several seconds, so her adrenaline is spiked and everything is going one way for her. Where the other guy, the other officer, his adrenaline is spiked as well, but he came from a completely different perspective. So when he had the opportunity to go hands-on with the perp looking at the other officer, he took that opportunity to end it. Now let's get it on the ground, because we know that taser works, about 50% of the time, it seems like. So rather than rely on that, let's get this guy on the ground and try to end this and control it as much as we can, as quickly as we can, so it doesn't turn into, the taser didn't work, so now we have to shoot this guy.
I love the fact, by the way, that our male officer, you can see he's teed up the guy's hips. Anybody who's done any kind of wrestling, catch wrestling, judo, anything like that, because he's got the tee on this guy. That guy has no strength leverage with him at all. He's going to be able to pick him up and slam him down and then get big advantage over him. So, and some of that is size, right? I wouldn't recommend that smaller female officer do that. Simply the size disparity. She has the same size disparity issues and strength disparity issues that the other woman did, and they both handled themselves very well in this case. But that male officer, bigger dude, with maybe some wrestling background, can then pick this guy up and go, "How's your father?" and just knock him down to the ground. Now, of course, this guy gets one arm underneath him, and so they're going to try to get that around so that they can get this guy into cuffs. And of course, I'm surprised in the originals, looking at the comments on the originals, that we didn't hear a lot of people complaining about the male officer using some punches, kind of punched him in the side there, and then used some knees to the guts there and to the ribs to try to get some compliance out of this guy and to get that other arm back behind his back. I think that was great. And I also want to say, Neil, I really love the fact that what it looks like to me is they just took this guy to the hospital to get him some help, because the violence was because of a mental break, and nobody looks like was seriously harmed here. Doesn't look like he actually did any injury to anyone. So let's get the guy the help that he needs rather than throw him in jail and pile a bunch of charges on him. So it seems like we get a good guy win by the private citizen here, a good defensive gun use where we never going to see it in the statistics because a gun wasn't fired, and good police work all at once. It's like winning Central.
Yeah, that's the thing. I really liked watching this one, because so often we see, in this scenario, if he had given him about 25 more knees, we're having a different discussion. But using some pain compliance to get him to try to get his hands in cuffs and get them under control, that's what we need to do. The guy is out of control mentally and physically, so let's at least control him physically so he can't hurt himself and he can't hurt anybody else. And let's do it quickly with as minimal force as we possibly can. Now, you're going to have to use big force on a guy that size, so you're going to have to use a knee. You may have to punch a couple of times, but he didn't overreact. The officer didn't punch, didn't overkick, didn't any of that kind of stuff. He used the force that he needed to get control of the situation, so he didn't have to escalate to lethal force or anything else. I think we saw the female officer there, dry stun him a couple of times just to try to help with that compliance. But that's the thing. I'm like, man, I'm actually tickled to see great work here from both officers, from the citizen at the beginning. Again, a couple of little things here and there that we could do differently, and that's just nitpick stuff. But man, everybody did a really good job here. And when it's all said and done, this guy's getting the help that he needs, and so everybody gets to cover their ASP.